After 16 years in power, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, the EU's longest-serving leader, is out. Opposition leader Péter Magyar's teaser party resoundingly defeated Orbán's Fidesz by securing a parliamentary supermajority at Sunday's election. Orbán's anti-EU populism failed to win over an electorate frustrated at high-level corruption, the cost of living, dysfunctional services, and Hungarian isolation on the continent. Orbán had the strong support of US President Donald Trump and was joined personally at a rally by Vice President J.D. Vance, who, somewhat ironically, accused the EU of one of the worst examples of foreign election interference he had ever seen. The EU actually stayed noticeably quiet during the election campaign, but it's no secret that the bloc was hoping for a Magyar victory, something confirmed by various leaders' jubilation at the results. That the Hungarian election was so closely watched in Brussels, other European capitals and the foreign press highlights just how much of an outsized role Hungary under Orbán has played on the European stage, from its Ukraine-related vetoes to its fostering of a worldwide conservative movement. So, in this video, we're going to explain what the Hungarian election, Orbán's decline, and the ascendancy of Péter Magyar means for Europe. If you love staying informed and want some of the best reporting on YouTube, then subscribe and ring the bell for more. So, perhaps the first thing to say is that, while Magyar will almost definitely represent an improvement on Orbán from the EU's perspective, it's important to manage expectations here. Magyar is not some sort of Macron-esque European federalist, and positioned himself more as a sort of conservative nationalist during the election campaign. Moreover, even if he wanted to, Magyar wouldn't be able to transform Hungary's political orientation overnight. Orbán has spent the best part of 2 decades engineering institutional capture, and undoing this will take time. To give just a couple of examples, the Constitutional Court is still stocked with Fidesz loyalists, the Budget Council retains veto power over any spending plan, and Orbán and his cronies still wield a considerable influence in the Hungarian media, judiciary, and much of local government. The point we're trying to make is that Magyar is not an unconditional enthusiast of deeper European integration, and he'll be further constrained by Orbán's lingering influence over Hungary's institutions. Nonetheless, there are a number of areas where Magyar will make an immediate difference. Most obviously, Magyar's victory is good news for Ukraine. As you probably already know, Orbán was constantly vetoing and diluting European support for Ukraine or sanctions against Russia. Most recently, Orbán had signalled he would veto a plan by the EU to use joint debt to fund a further €90 billion in financial aid for Ukraine, despite the fact that he'd already secured an exemption, meaning that Hungary wouldn't be involved in paying off any of this new debt. This would have been disastrous for Ukraine, which is due to essentially run out of money sometime in the next couple of months. While Magyar hasn't explicitly said he'll withdraw the veto, European policymakers are apparently confident that they can get him on board, not least because Magyar has said he immediately wants to start negotiations with the European Commission over unblocking frozen EU funds. If this does happen, it'll pave the way for not just more aid for Ukraine, but also more joint debt, which will give the EU more fiscal firepower and probably ultimately encourage deeper integration. What's interesting here, by the way, is that when he first rose to political prominence, Magyar was very cautious on the issue of Ukraine, pushing back against the idea of fast-tracking Ukraine's EU accession and getting teaser members to abstain from key votes on Ukraine in the European Parliament. Moreover, as time's passed, Magyar has become, if not more enthusiastic in his support for Ukraine, then at least more enthusiastic in his criticism of Russia, largely in reaction to Orbán's attempt to centre Ukraine during the election campaign. For context, Orbán spent a lot of the campaign having a go at Ukraine. Among other things, he accused Ukraine of interfering in the election via a Kiev-Brussels-Berlin axis, interrupting Russian oil supplies to Hungary via the Druzhba pipeline, and even implied Kiev was behind a plot to blow up Hungary's gas infrastructure after 2 backpacks of explosives were found near the Serbian stretch of the Balkan Stream pipeline. Orbán was presumably hoping that, by centering Ukraine, he'd be able to turn voters' attention away from corruption issues and create some political distance between him and Magyar, painting Magyar as some sort of pro-war stooge, doing the bidding of Brussels. This strategy backfired. Magyar was instead able to frame Orbán as a Russian stooge, especially after it emerged a couple of weeks ago that Orbán's foreign minister was holding regular phone calls with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, and after Bloomberg leaked a phone call between Orbán and Putin, where, somewhat embarrassingly, Orbán offered to be the, quote, mouse to Putin's lion. Something similar happened with the US as well. Magyar originally signalled he was open to working with the current US administration, but after JD Vance's visit to Hungary in the last days of the campaign, Magyar put out a pointed statement insisting that, quote, no foreign country may interfere in Hungarian elections. Hungarian history is not written in Washington, Moscow or Brussels. This all suggests that Magyar might be more receptive to European efforts at integration if they're framed as necessary to guarantee European sovereignty in the face of Russian or American influence. And finally, we're going to take a look at the political implications of Hungary's election on Europe. One of the most obvious points here is that Viktor Orbán is no longer in a position to be the EU's bogeyman, and other European governments can no longer hide behind the Hungarian veto. For instance, if Magyar does indeed drop the Hungarian veto on certain issues, will the likes of, say, Slovakia's Robert Fico be willing to stick his neck out to become the most prominent roadblock in the EU, with all the diplomatic risks that that brings? Furthermore, Magyar's victory, and the scale of his victory, is a massive slapdown of the Putin-friendly, Trump-aligned right-wing movement in Europe. It shows that belligerence against Ukraine, which became a core feature of Orbán's campaign in this election, and keeping strong ties with Putin can be a losing strategy, which might make other European politicians think twice before leaning further into this. It also says something about the value of alignment with and endorsement from Donald Trump. Trump dispatched Vice President JD Vance to Budapest in the final days of the campaign, where Vance rallied with Orbán, who he described as a defender of Western civilization. In a further bid to boost Orbán, Trump wrote on Truth Social ahead of the election that he was ready to use the full economic might of the United States to strengthen Hungary's economy. But this clearly fell flat, and the result serves as further evidence that Trump's backing is not a golden ticket, and could, in fact, do more harm than good to a movement's electoral prospects. It's not unlikely, then, that other right-wing populist parties in Europe may seek to visibly distance themselves from Trump, Vance and co. Now, with stories like these filling the headlines, it's easy to be swept up in huge geopolitical and national security issues, and you might find yourself neglecting your own personal security. Your email is often overlooked when it comes to security, as you might think a couple of spam emails can't possibly be that harmful. But did you ever think about why your inbox is suddenly full of emails you don't want? That's because those big tech companies that are responsible for your emails aren't built to protect your inbox. They're built to sell your data. Thankfully, Proton Mail has your back. That's because Proton Mail offers one of the few genuine tools that protects users' personal information from being monetized or misused by those tech giants. They encrypt your emails, prevent surveillance from bad actors, and give you back control over your own communications. Proton has even made it so easy for you to switch from your old cluttered email with a tool that will make this possible to achieve in just a few clicks. Or you can just start fresh with a new email account and a clean mailbox from the beginning. But that's not all. They also offer a unique generational reset for you and your family. In today's society, even those born with complete anonymity can only stay private for so long. Children are now funneled into major tech ecosystems through school tools and apps that require specific accounts. And as soon as a child opens up a basic email account, their basic privacy is compromised, and big tech will instantly start to build an advertising profile without them even knowing. Thankfully, Proton Mail's Born Private campaign has an answer to that exact problem, as it offers you the opportunity to easily reserve an account for your child. You have the opportunity to protect their digital identity before profiling and tracking starts. So, if you want to take back your own privacy or protect the future privacy of your family, start using Proton Mail for free using our link at proton.me/bp/TLDR. And you'll be one step closer to a fully protected online experience free of data exploitation.